Hi, this is Regeline Sabat, also known as Gigi. You're listening to Walk With Me podcast. My guest today is Dale Gibbons. Dale began his career in the aerospace industry in 1987. The first 18 years of his now 33-year career was in corporate America with firms like GE, Compaq, EDS, and Manpower, Inc. After reaching the executive ranks and growing tired of climbing the corporate ladder, Dale took the road less traveled and in 2005 acquired a small struggling technology firm. While applying his passion for leadership and entrepreneurship, he reinvented the business, which is now ranked fourth on the Business First list of 50 largest Louisville, Kentucky area technology firms and has made in the Inc. magazine list of fastest growing private small businesses in the US. Dale sold his business in 2015 and now helps small business owners write themselves bigger paychecks. He lives in Southern Indiana on a small firm with his wife, Tabitha. They've been married 28 years and have two boys, Nick, 27, and Nathan, 22, and an Aussie doodle named Dutch. Welcome to the podcast, Dale.
Hi, Gigi. Good to see you. Good to chat with you again.
Likewise. Now, why don't you start off by telling us about you and where you're from?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm from Southern Indiana here, just north of Louisville, Kentucky, and I've been here most of my life, with the exception of about 7 years living overseas during my my corporate life. I lived in 4 different countries and had 4 different addresses. I mean, they weren't just sort of, I passed through for a couple of weeks. I was there for for a haul. And the last country was Brazil. Our oldest son was actually born there. And we came back in '94. He was speaking Portuguese at the age of 3, but he doesn't speak it anymore. We didn't keep that going, unfortunately.
Now, do you speak Portuguese as well, Dale?
I would say yes. I would say it's serviceable Portuguese, so I can definitely have a conversation in Portuguese with my Brazilian friends, and it's a lot of fun. Actually, I was at the doctor the other day, or I was on the phone. It was a Zoom call with a doctor, and she was thinking and counting, and she was doing it in Portuguese. And I said, "Wait a minute, did you just count in Portuguese?" And she was really stunned by that because not many people recognize the language. So it's kind of interesting.
That is amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. Absolutely amazing. Now, Dale, you have 3 business and money principles, one being small business marketing during the pandemic. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, sure. Small business marketing during the pandemic is, it's not too much different than it is when we're not in a pandemic. However, the pandemic separates my farmer that I used to work for used to say, it separates the sheep from the goats. I'm not real sure what that really meant, but that's what he used to say. So I suppose it really means it's sort of this natural culling in a way, because when we have really challenging times of crisis like this, which is really unprecedented in our lifetime, my lifetime even, it does separate the people who really are good at marketing and those who are just getting by. It really does. It makes a difference.
I agree. And your second principle is business owner psychology and taking off the head trash. Can you explain that?
Yeah. Taking out the head trash. That is a mighty important daily ritual. I think that probably is the highest priority one. Now that I think about it, it's probably the highest priority one, because it's so easy to let self-doubt and the enemy from within and the enemy in the world, quite frankly, to cause us to second guess ourselves. And that's the head trash I'm talking about. It's the conversation going on in our mind. And I don't know if you've ever read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl is a Holocaust survivor, and I think one of the main takeaways in his book was, of all the crazy things and unspeakable things that happened to him, there's one thing that the enemy could not take from him, and that was his ability to choose what he thought about his circumstances. And I think that choice, he said, happiness and success lies in that nanosecond, that little space between stimulus and response. And when we think about what's happening in our businesses and even what's happening in our country, in our world, boy, that's where the lesson is. What happens at any given moment and how we respond to it determines the outcomes that we experience. And so that's what I mean by take out the head trash.
Amen. And it's very important to maintain a positive mindset. Would you agree?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I mean, we're either in an upward spiral emotionally and psychologically, or we're in a downward spiral. We're typically never in a neutral place. We're always moving one way or the other. And we're all susceptible to it. So I work really hard. I work from my home here and with my wife and we got 2 dogs and a cat. So this pandemic, social distancing wasn't new to me before this whole thing started. I kind of batched my trips and things like that. And but the point is that especially when you work in sort of an isolated sort of mode and you're by yourself a lot, and you only see people like I'm seeing and talking with you. We have to work on that psychology. So I'll take breaks. I'll listen to positive music. I make a point to limit my news intake because there's nothing happy on the news, generally speaking. So that's important. It's important to be very careful about what we let inside our mind.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Dale.
Mm-hmm.
And now your third principle is cash flow improvement and management. Can you explain that to us?
Sure. Most businesses and most people and most families really get into trouble more often than not for cash flow reasons. So if we just think about a business, for example, profit and cash flow are 2 very, very different things. I mean, you can be a profitable business and be out of business because of cash flow problems. I mean, I remember one year, the technology business that you mentioned in your intro there, we posted a 900 and just short of $950,000 profit, but we had to write a check, and this was just poor tax planning on our part. We had to write a check for well over $300,000. So we were we had $1 million profit on our income statement, but after we had to pay all the taxes and stuff like that, we had a cash flow problem, which is kind of ridiculous and very discouraging. So that was a huge lesson. And I had on top of that, I had a bookkeeper. I'll just call her Mrs. Sticky Fingers. She embezzled tens of thousands of dollars from us, and that put us in a cash flow problem. So between those 2 things, I learned the hard way, which unfortunately that's how I seem to learn things. I learned the hard way that cash flow management is absolutely the key. So I actually developed a system and wrote a book. It's on Amazon on that topic, on cash flow management for both your business and your personal finances.
And what is the title of your book, Dale?
The title of the book is called Master Your Money in 7 Days. And
correct?
What's that?
It could be found on Amazon?
Yeah, you can find it on Amazon. It's a very easy read, nothing complex about it, for 2 reasons. Well, really for one, because it's easy to write that way. And, it really is an easy read. It's a short parable kind of written in, really easy to read language.
That is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Now, Dale, what has given you the most joy and fulfillment in your life?
Oh, easy. Having a personal relationship with God, and number 1, through Jesus Christ. I know, that can be a charged topic for folks, but that's the truth. The second thing is my family, my wife and my 2 sons, and being entrusted by God to raise 2 of his children, 2 young men who were, just doing great, and mostly because of my wife of now 30 years, which is a total testament to her patience and tenacity and grit.
I love it. And can you tell me more about your faith, Dale?
Sure. more about my faith. Wow, that could take up the rest of our time here. Yes, one of the things that we are missing is, I think one of the things, Gigi, that people are missing, and I think they're hungry for, is number one, truth, and number two, leadership. And for me, truth and leadership, I find it in the Bible. Um, I think Jesus is the ultimate leader, um, and the ultimate example of how to lead. Um, you know, I know it's not a politically correct thing to say or to do, but I don't really care. The truth is the truth, and you're speaking the truth when you get a whole lot of pushback and a whole lot of uncomfortable response. There's a pretty good chance that you're sneaking up on the truth when that happens. And so faith is important to me for sure. I know that when this life is finished and we open our eyes to the one that comes next, all of the business stuff and everything and all of that, none of it's in and of itself is going to matter. There's no language barrier, there's no color barrier, there's none of that where we're going here. And I think that perspective is really important. It is for me, as I build my business. So I just don't make a big deal out of the small things.
Amen. I love it. And now, Dale, how did you make the decision to choose the vocation that you did? And did you pivot at some point and start something new?
Well, I made the decision that's a great question. I made the decision to do what I did. Well, first of all, I've been writing this post, Gigi, about, especially since the last time we talked, which was an interesting conversation, as you might remember.
Yes.
And I really appreciate you for giving me time and your insight and things like that. It was hugely helpful. I've talked to my wife so much about you, and she wants to meet you herself. But I've been writing this post. I haven't published it yet, but I've been writing this post, and the title I've given it so far is "What Privilege Has Taught Me." But it's not the kind of privilege that most people think about on the news these days. Okay. So to give you an example, one of the things I was privileged with was being born to two teenagers who didn't finish high school. They eloped and didn't get a high school education, and they worked in factories. The bills and the babies came pretty quickly, and they worked in factories and they scrapped it together. And my dad was an alcoholic, and I got to hear them talk about money topics inside using their outside voice, if you know what I mean.
Yes, sir. And
I realized that better choices mean better outcomes. And while I was then, and I remain proud of my parents, are both gone now. They worked hard their whole life, both of their lives, working for pretty low wages, really. I knew that I wanted to do something different. And entrepreneurship was something I was always very interested in. My mom worked at a cap factory. They made ball caps, and she sewed the bill on the ball caps. And there's always factory imperfections, and they threw them in this gigantic cardboard box, and my mom would bring them home occasionally for us. And my friends at school started asking me, hey, can I get one of those? Well, I had a little business going, right? I started buying those from my mother wholesale. She'd pay 25 cents for them. And I would sell them for $1 at school. So my first business, I had a 75% margin on. I was pretty proud of that. My overhead was pretty low, So I got off I'll never forget, I remember my mom handing me 35 cents for milk money for the week. And I remember telling her that I didn't need it anymore because I was making my own money. And I was just very proud of that. And I felt like that was my way to contribute and help. And my mother did have to remind me, though, that, even though I was making my own money, I still had to take my turn washing dishes. There was no way I was getting around that.
And you
So
did, I'm sure.
yeah, I did. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, my mom had us washing dishes when we were so short and little, we had to stand in a kitchen chair to do it. So we always said, why don't we have a dishwasher? And my mother would say, well, why do I need to do that? I got 3 right here, me and my 2 brothers.
That,
So yeah, so it was that was my inspiration, really, is I just wanted to I had this this innate need and felt and feeling when I was younger that I needed to help my parents, and that was one way to do it. And decades later, because of some modest success, at least in business, I was able to purchase the family farm here and keep my parents in the home as long as they could physically stay here without hurting themselves or burning the place down. And so it's been a good decision.
that is powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Dale. And now you
Sure.
mentioned that your father was an alcoholic growing up. Can
Mhm.
you share your best advice to the audience of how to cope with that and how to overcome it?
Well, I don't know that I'm the best person for advice, but I'll tell you what I did. My faith, we've talked about this before. My faith is very important to me. So the I learned that was one of the other privileges I had, was to have an alcoholic dad. He wasn't mean at all. He was just he wasn't one of those mean alcoholics. He was just kind of silly, and I didn't want to be around him because the man I revered wasn't there anymore when he was like that. And so it was very hurtful to see him that way and to say some of the things he said and behave the way he behaved. Um, and so I learned the power of forgiveness. And my dad actually he stopped drinking when I had our second child here. He was born here. Our second child was born here in the U.S. And he and my dad were, very close when my son was a toddler. And I remember coming one day to visit. My dad was on one of his drunken stupors, and my mother was just livid, as she usually was when that happened. And I put the boys back in the car because I didn't want them to see him like that. And we drove home, and I came back a few days later, and when he was sober, and I told him, I said, look, I love you. And I never had confronted him like this. I said, I love you, Dad. Unconditionally. This has been a problem for our whole lives. I've never said anything to you about it because I knew how to deal with it. But I'm not sure the boys do. And if you want to do that, that's your choice. I'm just not going to bring them around here and risk them seeing you like that. And he never drank after that, ever. He actually quit drinking and smoking at the same time because he knew he wasn't going to get to see his grandsons near as much and have the quality of relationship that he wanted. And for him, in our case, that was enough to put the kibosh on that.
Amen. That is very powerful. Thank you for sharing that and
Mm-hmm.
how you overcame it as well. Thank you, Dale.
Yeah.
Now, did you experience an aha moment on your life journey?
An aha moment on my life journey. I've had so many aha moments. Gigi, I don't know if there's been just one. Um, I think the aha moments for me um, have been an accumulation of maybe smaller moments where I've had mentors, and I didn't even know that they were mentors at the time. I wasn't even aware of it at the time. But I've had mentors who really believed in me when I didn't. One of the privileges I had was I had the privilege of having a high school guidance counselor who told me I would never make it into a 4-year school. And that taught me that if I accept other people's opinion of me, then I get to keep those limitations. And I had people around me. Actually, the wife of the one of the farmers I used to work for, her name was Ruby, and I called her Miss Ruby. I've spoken about her a lot in talks I've done. And she was just wonderful. She had this brown Ford LTD with a compass on the dash back then. That was GPS in the 70s, those little floating compasses. And she would drive us to church and vacation Bible school in that thing. And we got a sermon in self-confidence every time we were in that Ford LTD with her. And she made sure that I understood as a little kid, before I ever even talked to this guidance counselor, that, look, don't accept somebody else's limitations of you. And so I was fortunate that I didn't accept that. And I'm a first generation college graduate from a 4-year school as a result of that.
Likewise, and that's a very powerful message. Now, can you explain to the audience the importance of obtaining a mentor?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. There's a good poem called The Bridge Builder, and I don't have it memorized. I would encourage you to look it up. If I had it in front of me, I probably couldn't read it and get through it because it's such an emotional, little piece of work for me. But the bridge builder is really what mentors are all about. There's so many people that have. My grandfather, one of my grandfathers, used to tell me a couple of things. Number one is he used to tell me, Dale, half of being smart is knowing what you're dumb at, which I think is pretty good advice. If I ever acted like I was, getting a little bit ahead of myself. He was a carpenter, and he learned his trade during the Depression in the Civil Conservation Corps that Roosevelt put together to give men jobs and women. And he was an early mentor, and what he taught me was that there's so many people who have already learned the lessons that, why would we want to have to learn them ourselves? I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt that said, why go through life making all the mistakes yourself when you can learn from the mistakes of others, right? And that's one of the early lessons I learned. And so I think that's the value of mentorship is, don't make those mistakes yourself when somebody else has already made them. Now, I haven't always maybe given the value to some of the lessons those mentors taught me that I should have, because like I said, I tend to learn the hard way sometimes. But hey, at least I've got more context, and I can say, oh wow, I get it now. That's why they said that, and it makes the lesson just that much more valuable.
Amen. I love it. Now, Dale, what is your best advice to the audience of walking with purpose and living a life of happiness?
Walking with purpose and living a life of happiness. I think it's really three things. I think number one, I personally believe everyone should have God in their life. If not, then I don't know what kind of compass you've got. I can't even wrap my head around not having that. I can't. For me, it's been practically a lifelong thing. I mean, since I was 11 years old, actually. So that's number one. Number two would be good health. We were given this temple, whatever it is, whatever you have, it's a gift for you. And I've been very fortunate. I've been gifted with good health, and I try to maintain it. If I'm going to go for a run here with my dogs in a little bit. It's pretty hot outside, so prayerfully I'll make it back. So good health, and number three would be good relationships. And none of that has anything. I haven't mentioned business. I haven't mentioned career. I haven't mentioned because those things are not the recipe for happiness at all. I firmly believe it's those three that I just mentioned.
Amen. Dale, thank you so much for sharing all of your principles, advice, and your tips. Where can the audience find you, Dale?
Well, you can find me online. That's the easiest way to find me. To find me otherwise would be quite the scavenger hunt. But Gigi, you got to come sometime. I'll tell you how to do that offline. I'd love for you to come visit. But you can find me online at your7figurebusinesscoach.com, and it's the number 7, your7figurebusinesscoach.com. And yeah, I'm happy to help anyone in your network or audience that I can. I'm happy to serve.
Thank you, Dale. And I'd like to take a moment to highly recommend you to the audience here and for them to go on your website, your 7figurebusinesscoach.com, and download your free book, The 90-Minute Business Breakthrough. Definitely go and check Dale out for sure. And
Yeah.
Dale, thank you again so much for being on the Walk With Me podcast. It's been a pleasure to have you.
You're welcome, Gigi. Always good to chat with you.
Likewise. Have a blessed day, Dale.
All right, you too.